So, this has the most disliked trailer on YouTube. But how's the movie? Let's find out.
When there's something strange in Hollywood, who you gonna call? Adam Timo.
So, Ghostbusters is directed by Paul Feig. It's directed by Paul Feig. So it's a reboot of the original Ghostbusters, which released in 1984. It's a completely new story this time. Oh, and by the way, the trailer, the really terrible trailer, it made it look like this is kind of a late sequel, but to be clear, it's an exact reboot. There's nothing tying in with the original. Oh, and just before I give my review, remember, I do think that the marketing for this movie is absolute crap. Some of the worst marketing for any movie. So, is this movie crap? No. In fact, I actually quite liked it. Now listen, I'm telling you this as a fan of the original Ghostbusters, as somebody who hated the marketing, but I do think that this is a good movie. But just keep in mind, I don't think it's a great movie. It's nothing groundbreaking. But overall, I just did enjoy myself. So, let me tell you what I did like. The cast is really good. Melissa McCarthy, Leslie Jones, Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon especially, and Chris Hemsworth, they are all great in this movie. The cameos by the original Ghostbuster crew, they're also pretty good and they're very memorable. The effects are nothing amazing, but they are pretty good. Paul Feig's direction is pretty good. And most of all, the movie is pretty funny. I mean, to be clear, it's not, like, absolutely hilarious. There are a couple of jokes that fall flat, but for the most part, it does work. I did laugh, or at least chuckle, consistently throughout the movie. I mean, there's nothing where I was, like, bursting out laughing like I did with The Nice Guys earlier this year, or even with Deadpool. But overall, I just think it is a pretty funny movie. And something that's pretty surprising for me is, I did really like the 3D. I mean, generally I just see 3D as some big gimmick, but when it's used right, it's pretty good. The way they used it here is really interesting, and I really did like it. There are a lot of scenes where everything seemed to be popping out of the screen, and I really liked that. However, like I said, this is not a great movie, because it does have some flaws. The pacing is not very good. The movie just kind of goes all over the place all the time, and doesn't really flow together very well. And the editing is terrible. Also, this movie has more similarities to the original Ghostbusters than Star Wars The Force Awakens has to the original Star Wars. And while I do prefer The Force Awakens over this, the reason for that is because The Force Awakens had fan service in there, but it did it really well in terms of direction, in terms of where it's placed. Here, a lot of the fan service feels like fan service and not really anything else. And again, there are a few jokes that do fall flat. Also, the villain in the movie, I'm not going to spoil it, but the villain is pretty forgettable. And also, while I do kind of like how the trailers made it all look really unfunny, because that way it's more surprising when I actually watch the movie, the one problem with the trailers to do with the movie is that they spoil so much of it. Basically, about 90% of the plot points are in the trailers or clips or whatever. And that did kind of annoy me. Still though, like I said, this movie was fun. I was entertained throughout, the cast gave good performances, Paul Feig's direction was pretty good, and I liked the effects and 3D. And it was pretty funny. So, considering that this is a flawed movie, but still a fun movie in my opinion, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Some people might disagree with me on this, but I think this movie is better than Jurassic World, which was released last year. And to all those people who say that you hate this movie, can you please watch the movie first and forget about everything you've seen in the trailers? Okay, so that's all for this video. If you like it, please subscribe and join the Tim